Hello, welcome to day 2. How are you feeling? Are you feeling okay about yesterday? I know yesterday was a lot. It's the hardest class by far. From here, we're just gonna start having fun, but you do need to know those camera basics. So if you still don't feel like you quite have them, it's okay. You'll catch on, I promise. The more you practice, the better it'll get. So just stick with it and I promise it'll get better. Today we're talking about editing specifically in Lightroom. Lightroom can also be a bit of a learning curve if you've never tried it before, but don't worry, it's really a lot of fun. I love editing. It's one of my very favorite things. I think it's really one of the things that sets you apart and kind of defines your style. So we're gonna have a lot of fun with this. I also love editing because it's kind of an immediate gratification thing where you can immediately see the before and after and the difference that you've made in the photo. Okay, so here's how today is going to work. I am going to pull up a photo and I'm going to walk you through my exact steps that I do with every single photo when I first pull them into Lightroom. I want you to be watching side by side and working on your own photo in Lightroom while you do it. This is how I personally learned Lightroom, and I promise it's the easiest way because then it kind of all sticks as you're watching it instead of just like watching the whole thing and then being like, oh, I don't remember where we started. If you do it along with me, it's going to stick better. So that is my recommendation. I recommend that you watch this video on your phone, pull up your computer with Lightroom, pull a photo in there, and then start doing it along with me. I also want you to make sure that the photo that you start with is a RAW photo. So if you haven't switched from JPEG to RAW, now is the time to do it. Go take a new photo, one that's in the RAW format so that we can start working with it. A RAW is a file format, just like JPEG or PDF or doc. RAW is a file format, and that file format saves a ton more data than a JPEG does. A JPEG is actually edited a little bit in camera. Because of that, people usually, when they switch to RAW, initially do not like it because they feel like they've gone like back a step, like their photos don't look that good. But it actually gives you a lot more flexibility in editing, and it's totally worth it. So switch your camera over to RAW if you haven't already. Go take a photo if you don't already have a RAW photo, and then meet me back here and we'll get started. I'm just gonna switch over now to my screen so you can see exactly what I'm doing on my screen as I talk you through it. Okay, so here we are in Lightroom. The first thing I start with is exposure, and I bring it up. I like to brighten the overall image right from the start and add a little bit of contrast. Then I'm gonna come up here to my temperatures and colors, and I'm watching for his skin tone right now. Right now he looks a little bit too magenta, so I could bring in a little more green like this, or I can reset it and grab the dropper. And what I do with the dropper is hover over something that's supposed to be white and click, and that's gonna turn that white into a true white and adjust everything else based on that. I'm gonna add a little bit more warmth back into it because I like a little bit warmer images, and then I'm gonna zoom in right here. Okay, so when you grab that dropper and hover over something, it's gonna pull up this little box, and at the bottom of the box it will tell you what numbers your red, green, and blue are. This is an easy way to figure out your skin tones. So if you hover over kind of a mid-tone, so not the brightest of the skin and not the darkest, but kind of a mid area, you want your red to be between 70 and 85, and you want your blue to be about 15 less than that. So this one's a little, it's not quite right, but it's close. And then the green should be between the two. So hopefully that makes sense. If not, you can totally just eyeball it. But if you're struggling with skin tones, that's a pretty good rule of thumb for your red to be between 70 and 85 and your blue to be like 12 to 15 numbers lower than your red. Okay, so I check my skin tone and then I'm gonna put the dropper back. Then I'm gonna zoom out and I'm gonna come in here so you can see, I'm just checking it one more time just to kind of show you just a mid-level area of the skin. So I put the dropper back by just clicking it back where it goes. And then this is what I do on every image. I'm gonna pull my highlights because I've got this really bright area. I'm gonna pull the highlights at least halfway down. All the way down kind of is a little too much for me, but about halfway is good. Then I'm gonna bring down my shadows and my blacks, and I'm gonna bring up my whites. That's gonna add a decent amount of contrast. Right now I'm really focusing on what the background looks like. I want lots of contrast in the background. Next, I'm going to come up here to the top right corner, which is called masking, and I'm going to click select subject. This is a really cool new tool that Lightroom just rolled out for the 2022 version. And when you click on it, you can see it's rendering refining results down here at the bottom. What that's doing is it's finding your subject and selecting just your subject. So we'll be able to go in now and just edit the subject and nothing else. So we can make him pop out from the photo. So once it's got it selected, it's going to turn the subject red. That just shows you where the selection is. And then I can come in here and start adjusting, and it'll get rid of the red so I can see what I'm adjusting. So I'm gonna do the same adjustment I did before. Up with exposure, up with contrast. I'm gonna warm him up just a smidge more too, which will kind of compensate for those numbers I showed you. And then you can see here's my before and my after. Do you see that big difference? Okay, so in order to see that before and after on your own photo, you click on the YY down here at the bottom left, and it'll show you your before and your after. And you can see I just fixed the colors, added more contrast, made my subject pop a little bit more, and that was all there is to it. It's very simple. This is the basic edit I use on every single photo. Thank you for joining me for day 2. I hope you had a lot of fun in Lightroom. As you can see, there are so many things we didn't even touch on. Lightroom is such a great tool and has so much in it. You can do so much with it. It's so awesome. So play around with it, experiment, take your photo for the day and post it in our Facebook page so I can give you feedback. And I will see you tomorrow for day 3.